Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Death in Cambodia, Life in America. Thank you so much for your patience, everybody, as I took a 2 week break to finally figure out exactly what I'm going to do as we close off the show finale. It's kind of weird to say, and actually really sad to say as well. But I guess we all knew that this was going to come to an end, right? I mean, stories don't last forever. The nature of Robert's story only brings us really to present day, and then that's really it for Robert. I mean, this is sad. I know this is sad for me, but regardless, I think we are going to close off the season with two extra guests and one final episode from Robert. Today, we have a guest, David Edsall. He was the business lawyer for my father, who not only helped him in the very beginning stages when Robert was learning how to, I guess, essentially, sign contracts for donut shops that he had built all along Highway 99. But also, David helped him through two of the lawsuits that we have discussed here. And I had thought that it would be a great opportunity to actually bring David on here and explain from his perspective what exactly happened during these two lawsuits, what he had noticed, what was weird about it, what did he feel that the motivations really were behind people trying to take Robert down. We'll start off by just simple introductions on what he remembers from the first time that he ever met Robert, and then we will go into what he remembers from the lawsuit. Let's dive in. Do you remember the first time you met Robert?
I do. I was a young attorney, just went out on my own in Camarillo. Robert happened to be one of the prospective tenants that was going to open a donut shop. And it was kind of interesting because everybody else I dealt with their attorneys. And then, Robert comes over here. I guess they told him that I would be helping with the lease. So what struck me is, he talked in broken English, but after dealing with him for a while, I could tell that he had a very high IQ. I thought he was very intelligent, but I just kind of admired him. I said, here I was scared to death when I started on my own, wondering if I was going to make it. And he already had 4 donut shops. He was way ahead of me, and he was a new immigrant and just very, very optimistic, very much a people person by nature. And not a bit self-conscious about his broken English or anything. He was just very comfortable in his own shoes, I thought. I've met a lot of very highly educated people that don't seem to have much common sense. Well, Robert really had a PhD in common sense and business sense. He just kind of almost had an instinct of, he dealt great with people. I think he could read people, and he was honest. He had a lot of integrity, and people could see that. And he was very humble, and he was willing to work hard. And I think all those things is, if you look at anybody that's successful, they have a piece of that in them. And Robert kind of had all those in him.
As Robert continues to climb up Highway 99 to open his donut shops, him and David then reconnect later on when Robert starts B&H and he finds out about another person in Southern California who's trying to take over and cross the lines into Northern California, as well as the fall of Golden Bake and exactly what happened there. So I continued to ask David, what does he remember from that time?
Sure. I think in the earlier podcast, you talked about how there was Northern and Southern California, and Robert had the Northern, where it was B&H, that was the smaller thing that needed to be built on, and the Southern California one was kind of the mainstay. They were doing well. So as part of the agreement, when they split the two things, they kept the same name for convenience, I guess, but they did an agreement where they had a covenant not to compete in each other's territory, and they kind of drew a line from Bakersfield right across the state,
Hmm.
and Robert had north, and who we'll call Joe had south. And so we had a 10-year covenant in there, and then I think as things went on, as we know, Robert, I think, was much smarter and worked much harder than the guy in the South. So not a surprise to me that the Northern California started doing extremely well and much better than Southern California. And so within the community, I think that word was getting out. And I don't know if it was sparked by jealousy or whatever, but the Southern California guy started poaching into the Northern California, even pricing below cost to take customers from Robert, which was a direct violation of the agreement. So early on, we wrote a letter and said, "Hey, no harm, no foul, but you got to stop this because it's in violation." We wrote the agreement, and then he was violating it. So we sent the letter thinking that would solve it, but no, he continued to poach up here. So it was kind of like Robert dealing with the bully, as at some point the letters didn't work, and we sent multiple letters
Hmm.
threatening to sue. And it came to the point where we really needed to sue because it was hurting B&H North financially because they were taking customers from that. So we were forced to file a lawsuit, and in most cases, that's when people would, okay, this is serious now. We better resolve this. But um, I think and Robert and I had talked about this. If this B&H South came to me and I was their attorney, I would have said, "Hey, you guys are in breach of contract. Let's get a hold of the B&H North and try to work something out because you're going to lose this lawsuit, and it's going to cost you a lot of money."
Yeah.
And for some reason, they pursued it, and so we ended up going to a 5-week trial. Is what they ended up having, a 5-week business trial,
So
and
do you remember when Robert first brought up that Joe was coming up to his territory? And I remember what was really surprising to me was that Robert actually said that he waited almost 8 or 9 years of allowing Joe to come up into his territory before you guys really filed the lawsuit because he really did
yes,
wait a long time.
yeah, we wrote a letter several times, and Robert kept thinking, okay, maybe not, this will do it. And he's busy producing, and lawsuits slow you down. He really didn't want to sue anybody. It's negative energy, and it takes away from what you're doing in the business. So, like I said, he literally had no choice, and we needed to do it. I think before that covenant expired. So we had all the damages that were involved in everything, and still, even at that point, he really wanted them to stop, and
Yeah.
that's kind of all he was looking for, and so it went all the way
Did
for long trial.
Do you remember if Joe he really was damaging a lot of the financial? I mean, was he really taking a lot of customers?
Yes, and I think the people up north were loyal to Robert, and that's kind of how he found out he was poaching up there because they would call Robert and say, "Hey, they're coming up from down south selling it," and they were pricing it. Probably it was. I think that it was one of the causes of action to illegal business practice. They were probably pricing a lot of the things below their cost just to take those customers from Robert, so to hurt Robert. So if
Mhm.
they're losing money on selling up north, there's no other reason he's doing that than he's got something wrong with him. I think either an extreme jealousy or dislike or hate for Robert that he wanted to just make life miserable for Robert, and he was doing that, and it was costing Robert financially to the point where it's getting to be big dollars that were being taken from him.
Yeah, because when I initially heard about this, I was talking to my dad, Robert, and was like, this seems very, very straightforward of a lawsuit. I mean, this stuff can easily be proven that you are breaching contract. I mean, you're in this territory, we can pull invoices. I mean, it's very, in my opinion, it should be very, very easy to win. Um, because,
But yeah,
but yet
you'd be surprised what court is. But that's the way I felt. We had proof. We subpoenaed records. We had invoices. I mean, we had everything we needed. And the fact that knowing that him and his attorney wouldn't try to come to some agreement, just kind of it surprised me. I thought, either his attorney's not very bright, uh, or that Joe down there was just he wanted so bad to cause a problem for Robert that he was going to spend the money. And I don't know if he really thought he was going to win. Apparently so, because he let it go to trial when it really never should have been. And but it did. It did go to trial, and
Yeah.
and Robert was successful on every count.
Yeah. Do you mind just kind of bullet pointing briefly what that 5 week process was like, and how did it lead to Robert's win?
Okay, yeah. And first of all, I just wanted to point out, I'm a business attorney, so I didn't try the case. We had a litigation experienced litigator that did all our business litigation, named Kevin McVeary, a very well respected attorney that passed away about a year ago, and then a young associate that was a brand new attorney that second chaired it with him for the 5 week trial. And I came down for several of the days, but I was up here running the business part. But it was out of the area, so they had to stay in a hotel down there, and just volumes of things, tons of witnesses and exhibits, and it was a 5 week trial, but the judge handled other matters on Friday, so it was 4 days a week for 5 weeks, so it was quite a lengthy trial. And in that process, I think the length of it, I think, in addition to having the facts in Robert's favor, I think the length of it really helped Robert, because he was there, testified and everything. And I think over time, the judge was able to see who the good guy was and who the bad guy was, and had a respect for Robert. And the guy from B&H South, he actually gave false testimony that was proven to be false. And there's nothing that makes a judge more angrier than that. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of sat through the trial knowing that. So at the end, it was interesting, as he gave a verdict very quickly. And, we sued for the damages, lost profits, to stop him from going up there. And it was 6 or 7 different items. And some of them that we just threw in there to bolster the case, that we didn't think we had enough proof to do it. And we actually won on every single one of them. And then plus there was an attorney fee provision. So they awarded that Robert got reimbursed for the attorney fees that he had paid us over the couple of years before that, which was a couple $100,000 by that time, in a 5 week trial. And so I guess talk about this now, but so as soon as we got to judgment, during the course of this, we discovered all the different real estate that was owned by the owner of B&H South, and we sued him individually and the company. And so we filed what's called an abstract of judgment, where we, in any county that he owned real estate, we filed an abstract, which means he had a blanket lien over every single thing he owned. And Robert's judgment was, larger than the guy was worth. Mm-hmm. And so we had everything tied up. And so he couldn't sell anything or refinance or transfer anything, because Robert was now a secured creditor on all his assets. And so, we were happy we won. Could have destroyed the guy, and he probably would have had left the area. And, and then Robert got a hold of me. He said, I don't want to destroy the guy. I just wanted him to quit doing what he was doing. And he said, if you can talk to their attorney and see if he'll pay me back for the attorney's fees that I don't think I should have ever had to spend, then I'll just let everything else go.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it.
That's probably the most surprising. I don't think people out there who would dedicate that much time to actually go through a lawsuit and then win, and then at the end of it just say, no, I just want the attorney fees back. And that's exactly what Robert had mentioned. And I know that that's really rare, but I guess it just goes to show it never really was his intention. He never really wanted to get and destroy him and get into this lawsuit in the first place.
Yeah, we sat until Robert said, hey, these letters aren't working, you have to sue them. So it was us that pushed Robert to do it.
Yeah.
It confirmed to me that he doesn't have a hateful bone in his body. And, I think more than anything, he was hurt that they put him through this, because he was just doing his own thing, minding his own business. And they kind of went after him, put him in a spot where he had no choice but to push away the bully, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
So that, and I don't know what the other guy's doing now, but he could be completely broke, but Robert, allowed him to go away with dignity, really. And I'm hoping he learned something, but I'm I I don't know. I think there was a character flaw to pursue something that was no legal basis for, in my opinion.
Yeah. Let's go and talk about the second case.
Okay.
So this was a bigger case for sure. Um, what do you remember from, oh gosh, it's a big one. Why don't we start from the beginning, just in your own words, what exactly happened with that second
Okay.
case?
Okay. The connection with the first one is, they had that 10-year covenant not to compete.
Right.
And I think Robert would have liked to gone down to Northern California once he kind of, was doing well, and he wanted to come to Southern California after he was doing well in Northern California. So the covenant not to compete had expired, but it didn't matter anyway because we had the lawsuit was resolved. And so the company in Southern California, Golden Bay, um, that was a competitor of B&H South, were also people among his community that he knew, and I got involved in the early part of that, and they were kind of limping along, not doing great, and I think it was, I don't remember exactly, Robert would know, but I think they invited him to come down and kind of look at his business, and Robert by then was experienced and knew what he was doing, and said he could take their business and expand it and make it profitable when it really wasn't at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they joined the efforts where they were 50-50, and Robert put in his time and talent into the thing, and in short order, and Robert would know the timing on it, but it was maybe a couple years, then that entity, no surprise, was extremely successful and was kind of the dominant one in Southern California.
Called Golden
And
Bake
then,
after merging together, and they rebranded as Golden Bake. Yes.
yes, yes. And and then, but he kept that as a separate entity from up north, which was his own thing at B&H North. And so this one down, he had a partner, and it was a fellow and his son, and I think we were calling Chris and Carl just to change the name. And then they were doing great. Robert was going down there several days a week. He was flying, spending several days down there is what he committed to, and then running his up. But I mean, he just turned that place around. I think they bought a warehouse building, and they were really making some money down. And then they basically, the two down there, same kind of a jealousy or thank you, Robert, we don't need you anymore. They kind of locked him out. He was 50% owner in the company. They had a election, and voted him out and had new officers, and said we don't need him anymore. And again, Robert, extremely hurt. He saved him, and it was just came out of the blue. But that happened again, and this was after Robert went through the other lawsuit, and I think he was kind of thinking, I don't think I want to have any partners anymore. They didn't appreciate what he did. So again, he kind of resolved this one where he could have done better in a legal arena, but he had him buy him out of the building and buy him out of the business, and at a very reasonable price. And he, went back up north and just did E&H North, and then was done with these guys down there. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe Robert knows, but it'd be interesting to see how they're doing, because in my experience as a business attorney, they needed Robert to be successful. And then when they got successful, they figured that, Robert had nothing to do with it, and they were done with them, and it was kind of baffling again, why it didn't make sense to me, and didn't make sense to Robert either.
Yeah, I in that particular lawsuit, he mentioned in an episode, and he will explain. You will hear that what had happened was that Chris, we will call him Chris for this for the sake of
The son,
yeah,
yeah.
the son Chris, had his friend come in and talk to Robert to sell, what is it, 10%? 10% of
Hmm.
Robert's share to this third partner. Robert said
Hmm.
yes, not knowing that this partner was just going to essentially sell it back to Chris, making Chris the 60% owner, making Robert the 40%. Do you recall that situation?
That's how they were able to outvote him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you remember that situation?
Yeah, and I had forgotten that, but that's right because I knew they voted him out, and that's how they did it. So they were sneaky about it and weren't operating in good faith at all. So another company that he made successful, uh, but then they threw him to the curb, basically.
Have you seen something like that before in your experience? This kind of trickery?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's unethical business people out there, and that was what I would say their behavior was. But like the first one, it was more because that one was really obvious. So it was more than the legal process. It was um, all I can say is the word jealousy. I think they had a tremendous jealousy, and Robert's one of the humblest guys I know. But we used to joke about, we called it CNN, the Cambodia News Network, where the rumor mill through all the community, and so people knew Robert was doing great, not because he ever bragged about it or anything, but he was achieving things right and left, and people resented that, I think, within the
Hmm.
community, and I think both of these situations seem to be a more of a result of
Hmm.
that than anything else I could see. Because both of the things the other guys did from a legal standpoint, like the first one where he went all the way and the suit was won. It was obvious the guy wasn't doing it for any chance of winning legally, and the same with the second one. Except Robert ended up settling out on that one, being through one lawsuit already, and he kind of took the short end of it to just get out of it. He did better being productive, doing his own thing, and I think that was the one that he decided. I don't think I can be partners with these guys anymore. They kind of used him a little bit for his
Yeah,
talents.
yeah, yeah. It's sad to hear these stories, because as I mentioned in a previous episode, it's something that I think we as a Cambodian community, and especially that generation, I think is something that we want to change. Second generation being me and my fellow second generation people out there are trying to change that. But it is kind of, it is sad to sit here and listen to the kind of jealousy and what my father has had to deal with, what he's had to take from his own people. It's very
Hmm.
sad.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about it, your dad is and was pretty amazing what he's accomplished. And like you guys talked about in some of the podcasts, he definitely worked harder than anybody I know. But I don't think it seemed like work to him because he loved it. He was driven, and he was a younger guy than me, and I'm thinking, man, this guy's, he's bolder than I am. I was trying to more conservative in my business dealings, but he was so confident, but he was capable. He was a very intelligent guy, and he had the people skills that he endeared himself to people because he was legitimately a good person, and I think people
Yeah,
wanted to help him. They could see, he had broken English and he was working hard, and people admired that. And he's been
yeah.
real successful. Kind of proud of him.
I don't know if he ever told you, but the second lawsuit when he got pushed out of Golden Bake by Chris and Carl.
Hmm.
The 6 months after that were the darkest months of his life. He told me that he had fell into deep depression and um, drank a lot, temper. He
Hmm.
just felt like he wanted to destroy everything around him. Do you remember
Hmm.
at the end of that and just kind of as he was being pushed out? Do you remember being there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I knew he was deeply hurt, and and I didn't work on every single business deals him, so I didn't notice that aspect of it. We talked about our health once in a while that we both needed to exercise more and all that kind of stuff, but I think that probably people closer to him, like family, maybe saw that part of him more than I did. He may not have wanted me
Yeah.
to see that part, but yeah, I knew it had to be hard on him because even as sweet as that first victory was, it didn't make him happy. It made him
Hmm.
relieved, I think, and so that kind of reinforced in my mind what he's a very good person, and then so he just went through that, and then he gets hurt the second time when he really saved their business, and they had a commercial building that they didn't have before, and he made them wealthy, and then they just discarded him. Because if they came to him and said, you know what, thanks, we like to buy you out, and talk to him about it and did a deal, he probably would have said fine. But the way they did it was just it just wasn't
Yeah.
right, really.
Yeah. Do you have any last minute remarks, Dave, about just the whole thing?
No, it's just and it's like all of us, we gain a little wisdom as we get older. So I think he'd be reluctant to do those kind of partnerships again, which is too bad because I mean, if the other guys had the same mindset he did, they could have even built something even bigger. But he really didn't need them;
Yeah.
they needed him, and he graciously offered that. But it's kind of nice to see him now because I think you've known him better now too. He's a more relaxed person looking back at what he's accomplished, and it's kind of interesting hearing some of that. I didn't realize that he was away from home as much as he was, but so you guys kind of took the toll of that. But I think he's a good man and trying to kind of make up for some of that
Yeah.
time too.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here, David, to shed some more light on exactly what happened. Um, yeah, no, I really think this is going to give the listeners a little bit more of a legal perspective on what that was, and
Hmm.
how kind of uncommon and how uncommon it was, and how maybe it was very, very clear that the people that he was dealing with had more intentions than just money, and a lot of it um, was very much the jealousy aspect, I think, of what we can.
Yeah, yeah. They just wanted to hurt Robert. I don't know, financially, and maybe they thought he was such a nice guy that he wouldn't do anything. But again, the first one, they gave him absolutely no choice, and we kind of pushed him. Robert, you have to file a lawsuit because this guy's he's just putting it
Yeah,
in your face that you're not going to do
yeah,
anything. So anyway, but over that process, I got to know Robert a lot better, and he was talking about the legal system here. I said, we never can predict we're going to win or not. I think we will, but and he said, you know what? I don't care if I win or lose. He goes, this country is so great. There's a system where you can have someone independent review your thing and feel like you have a fair day in court. Different from where he came from. So he really appreciates this country and the opportunity it presented, and he sure took full advantage of that
yeah.
opportunity. So, like I said, I'm proud to know him.
Thank you. Thank you, David. No, I'm sure all your efforts throughout this entire time, I mean, from the very beginning to the very last lawsuits that he's had, you've really been present through all of that. So I really do appreciate that.
Mhm. Thank you. I think I benefited and learned a few things from him
Yeah.
too. So I appreciate that as
Well,
well.
thanks so much, Dave. Thanks so much.